And welcome to the Wellbeing Show. Great to be here. We've got a sort of truly international lineup of stars with us this evening, which is going to be amazing. We've got Annie from Central America, and we've got Sarah from North America, and we're going to be talking to them in a minute. Just I'll start off my usual boring way, which is just to remind you this is a live show. It'd be lovely if you joined in. We're streaming on various platforms, which an old dinosaur like me doesn't really understand, but I've heard tell they're called things like Facebook Live and stuffy like that. Anyway, I think Facebook Live and on YouTube and on this thing called Periscope, which is, I'm fairly sure, something you've seen in a submarine, isn't it? But whatever. Apparently it's a social media platform. So you can join us on any one of those. I've got people sort of scanning the airwaves for your comments. It'd be great to have them. And you can give us a call as well. Old school. Give me a call. 07506 319 745 +44 if you're calling from outside the UK. And you can call on WhatsApp. Be lovely to hear from you, or you can send me messages. I shall try and periodically remember to look at the phone and come and join us. Anyway, so enough of that. On to the more important things. Annie and Sarah. Who should we start with? Annie, why not? Should we start with you? Hi, how are you doing?
Fabulous. Thank you for asking.
Great. Where is it you're beaming in from? Just remind me.
Beaming in. Currently, I'm in a place called Samara, which is a little surf town in Costa Rica. I've been here for a couple of months.
That's enough. I don't want to hear anymore.
Okay, sorry.
You're getting that reaction a lot, I think, from people, aren't you?
Yes. I'm not going to lie, but I'm also going to, like I said to your lovely James before the show, I have been through quite a difficult period in my life, and I think this is a bit of the not that there's a reward for having gone through your stuff, but I do think that there are some points in life where you do get to sort of land and coast for a little while after a very difficult time. So I'm choosing to take this in and do some healing work on myself while I'm in this beautiful place.
Good for you. And I think you do deserve it. Of course you do. And we all deserve all sorts of beauty and extraordinary things in our life. And we don't, I think I agree with you. We don't have to suffer to get beautiful things, but
no.
Some of us have suffered. And, I think the message is that if you have or are suffering, you can move beyond it into much more beautiful things. So it's a great story. It's great to see you where you are, having come through some of the stuff. We'll hear a bit about your story. You've been on the show before, so some people might remember you. Just gonna, and Annie is an international woman of mystery, apparently. So I've heard tell, but we're not going to talk about that because she'll then have to kill us or something like that. So we're going to stick with what she does, which isn't a mystery, which is Annie is a consultant around helping people around recovery issues, specifically around trauma recovery, mental health issues, and addiction recovery issues, and consults individuals and supports individuals directly in a very holistic way, and organizations as well. So and we'll talk about that. But I'll just move now to the amazing Sara Preston. Hello, Sarah. Good to see you again. And you've just moved house, you poor thing. How are you doing?
I did. I moved all the way across the country, California to Nashville, Tennessee.
Great. Nashville's sort of hometown for you, isn't it?
It is. I grew up in Franklin, which is actually just like 30 minutes south of Nashville. So this is home. I grew up here, and my folks are here, my niece and nephew, the whole crew. Everybody's here.
I remember seeing on Facebook when you first moved there, and your poor cat was having a heart attack because they discovered snow for the first time. Because that part of the US had the big freeze.
Yeah. Unfortunately, he's a Siberian cat, so he should have probably taken the snow better. But I think that he is, believed he was a Californian through and through. So
the move has been okay. You're settling in back in home, as it were.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's great. I'm just kind of getting settled in here. My things aren't here. You know, the only furniture I have is this piano behind me, which is what I staged for this call. And then I showed you guys what's to the right and to the left, which is a little bit less attractive, but bunch of packing boxes. But yeah, I'm here. It's so good to be home. I'm looking forward to getting to work here for both, you know, business and, you know, personal reasons. And I'm just really excited to be home. Yeah.
Well, I'm very happy for you as well. I mean, it's I know something of your story and something of your journey, and I know it's an important move to home for you, back to where your heart is, where you left it. So sort of reconnecting with all of that stuff. So it's good to see. And I'm going to try and get you to play that piano at some point, but maybe
maybe next time.
maybe next time.
I'm a little rusty. You can't really take, you know, couldn't really take this to the apartment in California. So it's been a second.
Somebody with a grand piano saying they're a little bit rusty. Yeah, okay, all right. That's where you invest in a grand piano, I suggest that you may be good at something. Sara is also a consultant, freelance consultant, working in very similar fields. I think the big difference is that you've never really practiced clinically, Sara, as far as and whereas Annie comes from a sort of clinical practice as well.
Right.
But very similar sort of backgrounds in terms of consultancies, particularly for organizations, and similar sort of queries and questions about the whole sort of behavioral health field and its direction of travel. And as I've talked to both of you individually about it, it seemed interesting to maybe bring you on to continue the joint conversations or the conversations we had individually, begin this process of having a joint conversation. I should say my agenda is I've wanted to develop this conversation for some time now, and grow it and bring more people into it and organizations into it, and look at how we begin to share concepts and ideas of what we think of as best practice, really. And so that was my interest in asking you both to come and talk about your own best practice and share it with us. Because I think people just get bored of me banging on about it. And I remember I can't remember if it was last week or the week before on the show, I got loads of messages from my team, sort of Teresa and Jennifer saying, "You've talked about that too much, stop. Go on to the more interesting things. We've heard you talk about that nonsense forever." And they were talking about my usual spiel about the addiction industry. And unfortunately, I didn't see the messages until too late. It was I saw them after the show. I'm sorry, but you know, so it sort of people had me ranting on about things. Let's just start, but maybe you can give each of you can give us just a sort of series of headlines about yourself as a way of, because they've never met, folks. I've sort of said, come on the show together, but they've not actually talked. So maybe you can just give us a little bit of your own personal history and professional story. And Sara, do you want to start off first and maybe just spend a few minutes and then move on to Annie, and that'll begin the sort of dialogue between the three of us, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. It'd be my pleasure. And it's nice to meet you, Annie. This is the first time we've seen each other, but you know, Noel says such nice and wonderful things about you. So I've been looking forward to this and having this conversation. Like I said, I grew up in just outside of Nashville, Tennessee. I started my career in the music business, and then moved into real estate. I think that some people really figure out what they want to do when they grow up, like immediately, 18 years old. They're like, I'm good to go. I know what I want to do. I think I'm just constantly reinventing myself. You know, I did those things. And I think for me, I realized that I was somebody who needed to be intrinsically motivated to want to get up and to run to the ball and to be really excited. And when I am those things that you know, I'll run until the wheels come off, kind of thing. So, you know, in my personal story, about 28 years old, I, you know, hit rock bottom, you know, couldn't figure out why for the first, you know, it really was devastating to feel like your own mind is trying to kill you. It's very confusing, because how do you fix yourself with your mind when your mind is trying to kill you with alcohol? And it felt like a very, very, it was incredibly overwhelming. It took a really long time to process, and ultimately I got sober. It took me about 2 years. So I'm, you know, tremendously grateful for that. And I think that once you have an experience like that, where people have dedicated their lives to saving others, it becomes really profound. In the idea of, if you're looking for something to do with your life, the idea that I could turn around and reach out to someone else and be able to pull them through, because it's, you know, it's just darkness for a while at the beginning, it seemed like a really great way to live my life. And so, you know, I've been doing that for years now. I naturally have kind of a natural ability on the business side, and so I've really found myself on that side, and through that, obviously, this is where these conversations come up about the frustrations of the industry in itself, and, you know, the good, the bad, the ugly kind of thing. And so really trying to walk that very narrow line of, you know, the truth is no money, no mission. And, you know, that's a saying from my dad. And so, you know, if you really want to do something great, you've got to figure out how to take care of your business. And when you take care of your business, your clients also feel that. And that's a very positive thing. So for me, you know, unlike Annie, who's a clinician, you know, I've really found my calling in being able to help great treatment centers to find the best ways to serve their clients, and do that with the highest of standards and ethics. You know, hopefully that's what we're aiming at. So that's a little bit about what I'm up to.
Great, thanks for that. Annie, do you want to jump in and give us your sort of headlines?
Sure. So lovely to meet you too, Sarah. And same thing, Noel spoke so highly of you, and that, you know, I just, and even just hearing what you just shared, I'm like, yeah, you and I have led a very similar path. I just want to clarify, I'm not a clinician, as in I'm not a certified therapist or a psychologist or anything. I'm a recovery coach, and I do consider myself at this point an expert in addiction and recovery, just because the amount of years that I've put into this field. But I don't, my background and my certification is actually in project management. So like you, Sarah, I came through the music industry. I was a DJ, as we joked about before the show. That really fueled my own addiction, and thankfully got sober almost 13 years ago now, and had had multiple careers. And I actually you said reinvent. I think part of my bio used to say that I was the maven of reinvention, because I've had 8 careers.
Yeah.
And I love that. And I love the fact that, same as you, like, I was inspired, and I almost got like teary when I heard you say it, these people who devote their lives to helping others, especially in those early days, is very moving to me. And like most people, I right away was like, oh, I'm going to become a counselor. And I went off to, take the schooling like 6 months into my recovery, and realized how codependent I was. And that was a big mistake. I always say, and I recommend this to every single person that I know, is to take that basic counseling skills course. Why? Because you learn how to listen actively. And it was the most beautiful gift. And it allowed me to listen in meetings, and allowed me to listen to people's stories and to really hear them. And so that's a whole, but I just wanted to really acknowledge what you said, because I think it's really beautiful and really important to remember that no matter how crappy I think the ethics of the business can sometimes be, that it's the people doing the work, the clinicians really doing the work, and the support staff doing the work, the people who really have devoted their lives to this, that make me keep coming back to wanting to help, just like you do, to helping the individuals and to helping the organizations. Because it's a beautiful gift to give people. So, you know, my trajectory was I worked at a treatment center doing their communications. I went on to, you know, sort of take my project and event management skills and hone that into marketing and communications, business development, all that stuff. And then realized again that I'd really rather just work for myself. And so the last 4 years, I've been a recovery coach to individuals and a consultant to all sorts of different organizations, a lot more on the advocacy side and policy, and less about the actual business of treatment. But I have very strong, as Noel can attest, very strong opinions about what's going on out there, because I've worked in it, I've seen it, I've experienced it, and I want us to do better. You know, my motto is no harm, right? Do no harm. We cannot be people who love people the way we do and harm them in whatever way, so that's where I'm coming from.
Yeah.
Great. Thanks, both of you. I mean, that's very clear. I suppose my sort of, I was pigeonholing you both a little bit, and sort of on purpose. I mean, I think we are much more than the labels that we get attached to us through our lives anyway. And this idea of a dynamic sense of self is crucial, I think, actually, in the modern world, and has always been crucial. So this idea of I'm constantly evolving, what I am is very different. And I remember sort of, you know, from my own recovery experience as a person coming into recovery, you know, I would be constantly looking back on myself 6 months ago and thinking, God, I was really insane then. And then 6 months later, oh my God, I was really insane then. And then 6 months, oh my God, I was really insane then. And it's been a bit like that, my life. I sort of look back and go, is that really me? Oh my God, sort of, and it's fine. I mean, I think that's okay. And sometimes that happens on a day-to-day basis, and I'm thinking different things, but that ability, I think, to be comfortable with flux is really important. And I think it comes maybe to one of the sort of knobs of the issue, which is the inflexibility that is happening within treatment, the industry as such. And it may start, given that you've both got sort of strong business heads. And this is a conversation I started the other day with Gary. So I'm expecting messages from Teresa and Jennifer any moment. They say, shut up about that. Because Gary was the one they said, you've been talking too much about this nonsense with him. And one of the things I said to Gary, and I wonder what you think about this, is that there's a distinct lack of ability and imagination in the private sector treatment services around business modeling in particular. And the sort of the obsession with making money means that people will look for just one small business model, which they know will work and they can pack patients in, and never sort of go outside of that if they've got a winning formula, because there's a lot of pressure on paying the bills and getting the patients into the beds and all that sort of stuff. And that in itself sort of stifles any real sort of innovation, and ultimately leads to this culture which creates unethical practice, when the individuals within it, as you've both so clearly said, are not necessarily unethical themselves. That they're subject then to forces that are larger. And I wondered, what's your experience of that? Because I work in the private sector. I run 2 companies. Absolutely, if I don't make money, that's it. It's over. It's done. So I get that. So, but I do think there's a lack of talent around these business processes, quite frankly, and people go for the easy buck. So maybe we'll just put that out there. Anybody want to have a comment on that?
Oh yeah, I'm like
salivating.
Yeah. So I think there's 2 problems. I think the first problem that we have as a society become very much like, this is how we've always done it, so we're just going to keep doing it that way, and not being innovative and not being creative, as you just pointed out, I think is part of the problem. And the other thing is just the literal, well, and so that, and I don't know how you feel about this, Sarah, but you know, we've been stuck in this inpatient treatment model, thinking that this is what we need, but everybody needs this, right? Including me. I don't think I needed to go to treatment. I didn't even try anything else before I went to treatment. I just went to treatment because the person I talked to about what she did went to treatment, and I just did what she did. This notion that everybody needs to go to inpatient treatment, you know, that whole model, I think is, you know, it's questionable. And then there's the, if we're not going to at least look at how we could do that differently, then we have to come up with better processes, because the inpatient treatment model, at least in Canada, and most of what I've seen, is it's not financially viable, which is why they're charging these ridiculous amounts of money, because it takes so many people to be there for these, 28 people, or however many people are in the treatment center. It's between having the housing, the food, all the things that they have to provide for them, it costs a ton of money. So I understand that as a business, you have to, I forget what your dad said, but like, there has to be there has to be something, it has to work. And I don't think it's working both from a financial standpoint, and I also don't think it's working from a human standpoint and what people actually need, because as I've said to Noel many times now, I don't think we're treating addiction. We're warehousing people in a treatment facility. I don't know that we're actually treating what's really going on with them. It's better, and we can debate, trauma and all the other things. I'm not saying that, but just, I'd love to hear your take on the business part of it, because like I said, I think those are the two issues, I think, as systemically, and then just as a business, I don't think inpatient treatment is a financially viable model. Okay. I'll just start with that.
Yeah.
So there's the gauntlet, Sarah, off you go.
There's a lot in here. So I think so people who have visited the hospital once and then recovered from cancer or something like that, they don't then decide to open, maybe some of them do with like their family wealth, but they don't then decide to go open a hospital. And so what I think we run into in our business is kind of an underprofessionalism matched with kind of a delayed understanding of what this really is. And I think the two of them have caused chaos, both from, an insurance standpoint, from a population standpoint. But I think also from how many treatment centers we have, and then how many of them are actually doing really good work. So I think that there's that, and not saying that there are plenty of, I would like to think that as a recovering person that I am plenty capable to navigate this business and do that in a way that is effective, in a way that is really helpful to people. And I think that there's plenty of people that are in recovery that can do that, but I don't think that everybody who recovers should own or operate a treatment center. So it's kind of one of these things where it's medical, but it's also this emotional thing that we've got to kind of figure out what exactly that looks like. I think speaking to the viability of the model, first of all, it was the only way that insurance cut it up in certain ways to be able to manage it. So it's kind of this combination of treatment facilities trying to fit within a model that, you get a specific criteria on how it is that you're going to, where it is that you're going to be and how it is that you're going to be treated. And if you don't fit in those buckets, then you don't fit. So, then that creates a whole different conversation. And I think, and I agree with you. I mean, the overhead in operating some of these things is pretty significant, which can cause some of these issues. Unless you have like a pretty large amount of mass, and you multiply yourself, and then, it gets less personal. So I think that for me, there's several issues in it. Now, where there are problems, there is opportunity, right? I think that there is a lot of opportunity for people who, I had a good friend of mine, Richie Blair, and I was just done. I was so burnt out. I was like, I can't do this. I can't, I probably use the word clown or something, can't deal with these clowns. And, if he said, if the good ones won't do it, then who will, and not that that means that I'm some of like, avenging angel or anything,
Please
but
don't start putting yourself down, Sarah. You're one of the good ones. End of conversation. That's fine. Just carry on.
But it did strike with me that, okay, I need to stay in the fight. And if it's not meeting up to the expectations of what it is that we have for it, which I think we are all in agreement on this call specifically, that we are not there. And so I think we're in a mess. I think we're in a little bit of a mess. And, my hope is that these types of conversations, interestingly, and what Noel and I have talked about a lot, is that I believe you're for Canada, right? Is that correct? So we've got Canada, the United States, UK, right? So we've got 3 different countries with 3 different ways of how they operate in getting people into treatment, the way that they receive treatment, what those modalities look like, whether it's insurance, whether it's free, whatever that is. And I think that for me, and what I've been really excited about is, man, let's get somebody from every country and see what they're doing. Let's all compare notes and let's start advocating for the right, for the best ways for the great treatment owners to be able to continue to stay in business and to be able to continue to help people, and for people to be able to genuinely access the care that they need. And we've got a ways to go. I think, definitely in the United States, healthcare is a big issue for us. So, no real answers. That was a lot of just kind of talking in circles, maybe.
I think there are similar threads, and let's look at some of those similar threads. One is the sort of the monolithic growth of these sort of monopolistic practices, which revolve around certain types of inpatient institutional care, which is unthinking and which needs to be fed. It's a voracious beast that needs to be fed because of its overheads. I mean, we can accept that that's a problem. It would be a problem in any part of the health sector.
Yeah.
If you're needing patients to pay your bills, that's a problem. If it's gone that way, that's a problem, and you've done something wrong, because you should be thinking about the care of your patients first, and then the paying the bills is an important part of it, but that's the second bit. So it's not your patients feeding so that you can pay your staff. So something's gone wrong there if that's what's happening. The other thing is the dumbing down of the services, which seems to be got a lot of nods, and certainly there's been research in the UK which supports that. There was a review of addiction treatment services in the UK by Baroness Black a couple of years ago, prior to the pandemic, and one of the things that she said was that professional standards in treatment had really gone down over the last 10 years. And principally one of the sort of processes in that was the moving into the industry of people who have no specific clinical qualifications or accreditations. And Annie, I want to come to you in a second and just talk about sort of your views on those things, because I know that you're not accredited, and I know I called you a clinician, but I also know that one of the things that you're very clear about is that you're not a clinician, but I think you are, and you are that important person who inhabits a specific space here, which I think is an important space to be heard and valued and recognised, because it's not going away. And how do we deal with it is the issue. At the moment, what seems to have happened is that people getting clean and sober have stepped into roles that they really shouldn't be in, have too much power, and dominate sort of practice without necessarily knowing anything about what they're talking about. And it's led to a sort of monopolistic one-size-fits-all treatment model, which is phenomenally successful at creating money, but not necessarily has any success at what it's supposed to do, which is help people get into recovery around a very serious set of mental health conditions. So those are sort of common themes across these spaces, as you said, Sarah. And rather than trying to fix all of that, can we sort of maybe think about, because I'm not sure we can, but can we maybe think about, yeah, no.
I thought we'd fix all that today.
Yeah,
You're
okay.
not? Okay.
All right, you're right. My expectations are far too low. Right. Hang on, we'll sort out the pandemic in the first half of the show, and then addiction services in the second half. Is that all right? I mean, it's fair enough.
I'm glad that we're all here because this is needed. Yeah.
Let's talk about how you've done it individually. Sarah, you've said something very important, which is that you almost left because you couldn't cope with it. And I think that's really, really important. So let's talk about how we do cope with it and what we try to do individually, rather than Atlas-like take on our shoulders the whole responsibility for the industry. So, Annie, do you want to jump in and tell us something about the sort of decisions you've made that have meant that you've been able to survive this situation and come out of it, and the sort of creative decisions that you've made as an individual? And that may begin to map some of the ways forward, if you like, that we need to look at.
Well, I like what I like about the way my brain works is I am a big picture thinker, but I'm also very clear on what I need to do as an individual. So I think it's actually both, and that's what you're asking. So what I just heard you say, and which I totally agree with, is what's there is so broken and isn't even really a system that there's no point in trying to fix it. Not only is it impossible, but it would be like, you said you were almost at a point of throwing in the towel, Sarah. I've gotten to the point of burnout with people who were unscrupulous, to say the least. And then just the sheer volume, like I can't take this many phone calls, being one of the only people who seem to know how to navigate the system, and people calling me constantly, help, how do I do this? How do I do that? How do I get my person into, this whole thing? Because our system is so broken. I'll speak to Canada anyway. The system is so broken and not even existent that they don't even know where to start, which is horrible. So I don't think fixing it is actually, not only is it impossible, but it's actually not. It's what's more in our best interest is to be creative and find ways that we can make something new. And that actually excites me far more than trying to fix what's there, because it's, so from this ethical perspective, right? This is why I was so clear with you. I'm not a clinician. I don't have designation behind my name. I have a lot of experience, and I have gone, I'm a certified interventionist, and certain things that I've taken training in, and I have training in, I'm a certified yoga teacher, and things like, I'm not trying to disparage myself. I'm just, the last thing I would ever want to do is get caught, for instance, like this man in Canada who was operating treatment centers calling himself a doctor, and he was not a doctor. Like this is what I'm talking about when I say unscrupulous. Now, and I'm sure there are stories of this in the States and in the UK. So for me to be, true to my own recovery, I have to be rigorously honest, right? And that's one of the many things I learned from the 12-step programs that I was part of in my early recovery, was to be, rigorously honest. So I think that I know what I need to do. What I need to do is take care of me. That's that whole notion of don't try to change the world. If you want to change the world, change yourself. And so, I enjoy working with people one-on-one so much, because that's where I can actually seemingly help someone really actually make a change, which makes me feel good. And then I'm feeling good, and then they're feeling better. And then that seems to snowball. And so for me, it's not that I don't believe in helping organizations, because I do. And I think organizations need help too. It's just that I think for me, what's become more powerful is my own, just what I'm doing to try to work on myself, choosing to leave things that aren't working in my life, whether it's a relationship, a job, a career path, and or a location in this case, and just actually taking care of what's going on with me has given me now a new lease on being able to, jump back into not just this dialogue today, but to my life and to my career, and to, because I agree with you, Sarah, like we need the good people, because for God's sakes, who's going to, if we leave it, if we don't, actually stay and fight, then not fight. I don't like that language either, but if we don't stay and do the right things, then who will, right? If not us, then who? So Yeah, I think working on ourselves and finding new paths, not trying to fix. I don't think trying to fix is ever going to get us where we need to go.
Right. Because I think, yeah, I'm with you. I think when you try to fix something that is endemic, it's experienced by the people in the endemic problem as an attack. It's not a fix. They don't see it as a fix. They see it as you assaulting the barriers. And I think there's a great there's British writer called C.S. Lewis who wrote things like The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. And in the Final Prince, the final book, Aslan, this character who is apparently meant to represent the Christian God, but Aslan is this sort of lion for people who don't know, but he's a really cool dude and really nice. And he's sort of in this shed, which is obvious imagery going on there about Bethlehem and stuff. But various people are being thrown into the shed, and some people see a roaring, frightening lion, and some people see this loving Aslan purring at them and having a chat and saying, "How are you doing?" And what they bring into the shed determines what they experience. And that's very much, I think, what's going on in the culture of the industry, is that people are in a very fear-based state around their practice, around their businesses, and they're very shielded around that. Thanks, Annie, for your honesty about sort of that you need to keep it real for yourself, and you're looking at what works for you is on the individual level. And if you can have a successful practice that is ethical and honourable and honest and works for people, then I think that, of course, is a roadmap into how we improve things. And it's also, I think, inspirational, because I think why I want you to be part of the conversation tonight is because my feeling is that the sober coach interventionist stuff is not going away. And I don't know if it should do, but what happens is, one of the points that Baroness Black made was that that person, that individual that comes in without a professional background, has less ability to fend off unethical practice and unethical culture, because they don't necessarily have the training and the skills to be able to say, well, that would harm my patient, I'm not going to do it. So they come in untrained, unqualified, and unskilled, and they're handed practices by other people, and and those practices might be good, they might be bad. On the whole, they're often bad, and they just assume that this is the correct thing. And I saw it a lot I worked in a hospital closure program, and this hospital had many generations of the same family working there, and so mum, daughter, husband, those types of family relations amongst the staff. And it was very difficult for daughter to say to mum, if mum was the head nurse, "Mum, you were wrong in the way you did that thing. That was unethical practice, mum." And it's those types of familial relationships emerge in this industry at the moment, where people who don't have a strong identity around their practice are handed bad practice, get involved in, you use the word codependency, but get involved in unhealthy professional relationships where they don't know enough or even feel secure enough to be able to challenge something. And I think that's why I think it's really important to have you in the conversation, Annie, because I meet the other side of it, which is people who think it's really okay what they do. And then they talk to me and they go, but I'm here to help people. And they're not critically aware of what they're doing, and they're not understanding the abuse that's happening in a similar sort of way. So I think I think it's really important that that conversation is happening, and we look at how we manage that issue so that we do provide nodes, if you like, of best practice, or we can point to things that are good and safe practice. Sarah, what's your personal / professional, how are you surviving? How have you survived? How will you survive? And maybe that points to a few things that can be generalized in the way that Annie's just described some of her stuff.
So how have I survived? Well, I think as far as my career goes, I have strategically kind of chosen to work for organizations that there are things to be learned, right? And especially in my, especially in my younger career, it was essential that I not only find a nice place to work, but that I would have mentors that I could learn a lot from, and so I've kind of positioned myself in that way through my career. And in that, I believe that kind of the way that my kind of method or madness is if I select those things very carefully and go after learning those specific things, that I will come out with a very well-rounded understanding of the substance abuse and mental health industry. And I think that I've accomplished that. There's always more to learn. I do not have it mastered by any stretch of the imagination. I think that for me, that was really crucial before. It's always been my dream to be able to do something of my own, whether it was a consulting business or whether it was, creating some sort of treatment center. And what was really important is that I lay that foundation. So I think that education has been a huge part of how I've survived. I think that by choosing to educate myself instead of necessarily chasing dollars, I have been able to be kind of successful in that way. And the one time that I did it the other way around, it was pretty painful. So lessons learned again. I think that, as far as, and I'm totally with you. I think that moving forward, leading by example is really the only way to go about it. And if we start people follow people who are doing good things that work, right? So there are ways to do these things in a way that is successful and in a way that works if you are innovative and hardworking enough to paint outside of the lines. Yeah. And so what that is, it's interesting too, because COVID has really opened up a lot of opportunities for, I think, it's demolished things, but in disaster or in chaos, there are opportunities. And I think that we may be reaching a point where this actually forced insurance companies to look at this delivery method a little bit differently and to bring in the telehealth things and to get a little bit more creative. And so we kind of broke a barrier, I think, through that, at least in my experience. I know some people were doing virtual things, but that's become a lot more accessible, which makes, getting treatment inside of your home more accessible. So I think for me, education, staying up on what I'm doing, work with the good folks, help them do good work, as a consultant, and then try to come up with something. And I don't know what that's going to be yet, that is useful, that works in both really helping people and being able to stand on its feet, and then just jumping out there, it's and trying to do something in a different way. And I don't have that all figured out yet.
Yeah, I suppose what I'm hearing something, and I think I'm hearing this from both of you, but I'm hearing it from you at the moment, Sarah, is that you have to have the courage to stay true to yourself and not give up on yourself. And you talked about the pain that you experienced when you started chasing the dollars rather than what you believe should be happening, and you listened to that pain. And to be honest, I don't think a lot of people do. I think they don't listen to that pain. I think they experience it, but they decide to somehow put it to one side, construct intellectual defenses around that, and then buy into the culture that the dollar is more important. And that pain then becomes something that they sort of nail themselves to a cross with, to prove somehow that they're doing good, rather than what the pain should be telling them: I'm doing something wrong. Because that's what pain is there for.
Yeah, I think specifically people in recovery, if you're not able to identify those things, or if you do, and then you continue to work inside of an organization that would not have saved your life when your life was either saved through
Yes.
whatever that is, it is so grossly wrong in your
Yeah.
body. It doesn't fit. It feels like a crime against your people.
Yeah.
And so, you know, uh, I wish I'm very surprised by the individuals who can maintain their sobriety and be able to do it the other way around.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I don't think they're necessarily maintaining their sobriety. One of my issues would be, without taking people's inventory, was that this illness that we share can take many forms, and money is one of them.
Sure.
And I think
Sure.
in many ways that's what we're seeing, is that whole sectors of the industry being taken over by that particular illness, and people need to do some soul searching around that. They're not going to, I don't think, because they don't unless they're forced to. And something I've learned in my recovery is not to. That my forehead is nice. I like it the way it is, and it isn't so nice when I smash it against a brick wall. So I've decided to stop doing that in my life, and just go with sort of. Now I feel comfortable as a business person, and I've got now a business model that works. And one of the things I've been working, we'll come to pandemic and how that. One of the ways the pandemic has affected me is it's forced me to look at the resilience of my business model.
Sure.
And how I work. And I think it talks to this conversation because, there's an old, I come from a theatre background. So, you can tell, can't you? I'm sort of demonstrative and stuff like that. Director and all that nonsense.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. I did. I was an actor for sort of many years, actually. And but there was a debate that happened in theatre by a guy who wrote a book called The Empty Space. I'm trying to remember his name. But he argued this point, and I think it pertains to this direction of travel in the addiction industry. He wrote about one of the sad things that was happening about theatre, and this was written in the 60s, was that it was becoming so expensive that we were going to see a situation in which, in the future, the theatre would be booked out by one millionaire or one billionaire, because nobody else could afford the ticket, and the performance would be for that one person. And he argued that was the end of theatre if you did that. And he started a whole movement in theatre about looking at that theatre, the essence of theatre, if you like, is this relationship between the audience and the performer. That's how you understand theatre, and it reinvented. And it was part of a sort of whole revolutionary movement about taking the arts out to the people, all that sort of stuff. And it had very powerful. Now, I see parallels with the addiction industry in very clearly in that the way the direction of travel is the targeting of the cash cow, very wealthy group of people who can afford the fees, and what happens is then you get a smaller group of people packed into these high-end luxury facilities, and that they chase these individuals. Peter Brook, thanks Jennifer, she's not shouting at me this week to shut up. It's Peter Brook was the theatre director who wrote The Empty Space. Thanks Jen. I just got a message from Jen. I must be okay tonight. She isn't telling me to shut up. And I think that we are seeing the emergence of that, this chasing of these super rich people for whom, and I think about the Hollywood model, they call it the Hollywood model, where recovery isn't really all that important. Actually, it's just, it isn't all that important. It's just a holiday, a drying out period, and just keeping their child, their super wealthy child, out of trouble, because otherwise they'd get into trouble with the police or something like that. So it's the opposite of recovery. It is literally what Annie's talking about. It's warehousing, but it's warehousing in a very plush lifestyle. And it's literally codependency. It's not recovery at all. It's literally the codependent parents rescuing at the nth degree because they've got an unending amount of money and they can afford to do this. And that is the direction of travel at the moment of addiction services. And it's moving further and further away from, I guess, where all three of us sort of learned a lot of our recovery from, which was in the community with things that cost £1 or $1 in your case. And the pot was passed around. And they were self-financing groups. And so there's that sort of thing. And I think, you know, there needs to be that revolution. And it seems to me that we're trying to, in this dialogue, get back to some sense of what that is about.
Well, humanity. We've gotten so far away from humanity and connection. Right. I mean, what you're talking about and what I said about and Sarah, same as you, I remember asking a potential boss, you know, I was being offered this national marketing director role, and I said to them, well, I just need to ask you one thing, you know, are you doing this because you want to help people, or are you doing it because you want to make money? Because if you're doing it to make money, I'm not your girl. And it's not that I don't want people to be successful. I don't have an actual problem with money, but I have where people's intention is, right? And so whether that's individually or as a treatment center or globally, and I said this to somebody earlier today, we've predicated our entire world on this thing called the economy instead of on people, right? And so when I started hearing people, you know, humans refer to beds instead of people, instead of patients or clients, beds, I'm out, right? Like, this is not, like, it's just not who I am. Like, I want to be, I want to be focused on humanity, on being compassionate to people and figuring out what it is that they need. And most people need community and they need healing. They don't need to be, I mean, they might need separation from their behavior or their substance of choice for a period of time in order to start the process of healing. But healing does not happen, right? I mean, what did they say to us? You know, recovery might start in a treatment center, but it's not where it actually will happen. It happens when you get home and you have to deal with your family again. It happens in your community where you have to go back to work, or you might have to find a job, or you might be volunteering or doing whatever myriad things you might be doing. But that to me is, you know, it's like I said, it's individual, it's community, and it's our whole world. We are focused on something that's about money. The money makes the world go round, and the economy is not, you know, I get it that we can't escape it at this point. We've created it, and it's, you know, it is the way it is. It's just, that's where I might be a bit of a John Lennon dreamer, where I think that there's a better way.
I don't think you are. I'm going to put this question to Sarah, because one of the things I've looked at during the pandemic is how I diversify my business model, make my business model work and become much more resilient, because I could see myself going down that route of, I need, you know, 2 or 3 really wealthy people and I'm done. And in a sense that would be okay, wouldn't it? Do you know what I mean? They call them whales in coaching. You have the whale clients, which are these huge bloated clients with loads of money. And these are the dream clients for people, but they're not, because what happens is you get sucked into that world, which is a really unpleasant world. And so many of my patients who come from privilege and wealth have been destroyed by it, because it isn't in and of itself a life-affirming state of being. It is full of fear. It is full of, money is weaponized. Money becomes a substitute, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it's not a friendly or pleasant place to be. And yet, as an industry, people seem to be attaching themselves to that life experience, when I think I'm treating that life experience in many of my patients and the damage that does. And I can see now, with the work I've done in my business models, that it's much more resilient now. And the pandemic has given me that opportunity, because I have to think about it, because there isn't this international travel, and there was a lot of it was international patients and stuff like that. And it's great. It's fantastic. I feel much better about the future. Sort of, I'm getting the impression you do as well, Sarah, that there's something is happening for you. And I'm wondering if you can nail that a little bit and sort of share some of those positive hopes that you have, that has kept you going, I suppose. And when Ian said, you know, you had a choice, didn't you? When he said, don't leave because you're one of the good ones. You could have said, bugger off. I don't care what you think. But you didn't. You stayed. So there's some hope there. What is the hope that you see?
I think that just like everyone else, and I think you posted something about kind of things feeling vanilla. Was that something, does that ring a bell? That COVID has kind of caused kind of a general apathy. Was that you? Do you remember that?
Who are you asking?
You Noel.
Me, Noel. I don't know if I posted anything specifically like that. I might have done, but I can't remember. It might have been Jennifer posted it, and she'll tell me if she has.
Oh.
Jennifer, you posted that. You've taken my name in vain, Jennifer.
No, it was just a really interesting. It was just a really interesting read. Just kind of, you know, I've found myself, my natural inclination is to drive. And my,
you mean emotionally or physically?
Not physically, just as a person, I'm just in high drive, right? Yeah. And I think that some of that is inherited and some of it's taught. And I think that my talents and my maladaptive behaviors run really close, right?
Yes.
So I think that what has happened for me is that this year, and, you know, since COVID and everything, and, you know, and I've also had, you know, pretty wild year. You know, I think slowing down, taking a breath, being a human being, which is really not my MO. You know, I'd rather just like drive so I don't have to think about anything else, right? Because if I'm achieving, that's my drug, right? It's filling me up. Like I don't have to think about anything else. I don't have to think about personal relationships. I don't have to think about this. I don't have to think about that. So I think that for the first time, just like a lot of people, I slowed down, which is pretty foreign. And because I slowed down, things started to become more clear over time, and things started to actually settle in, if that makes sense. So if you stay in this business for too long, you may become the machine yourself if you're not careful. And I think that I wouldn't trade any of my experiences for the world, but I think that all of my hope is coming from kind of a pretty deep understanding of how the business works and what doesn't. And then I'm trying to figure out what it is that I want to do. What impact do I want to leave on the world? And what size does that need to be? And I think that I'm just feeling a lot of hope because for the first time, I don't have some sort of fear-based, you know, just kind of this fear-based motivator that ties into, you know, just kind of some of my natural talents too, right? And truly something I enjoy. But I think that the hope is coming from a place that a lot of the things that are happening could have never happened without a pandemic. And I know that so many people have lost so much. And so please don't, I'm not trying to belittle the situation, but it did challenge the way that we do things in a lot of different ways. And it caused us to innovate, and it caused us to grow, and it caused our families to come together, and it caused us to remember what's important. And I think I'm starting to feel a lot of hope around an opportunity for change in the right direction. And that feels pretty natural. And, you know, I'm just really grateful for the parts of it that have reminded me of what's important and who I really want to be, if that makes sense. So I think my hope comes from that.
Yeah, well, it's good to hear. Annie, where is your hope these days?
Well, Sarah, thank you. Like I like to call myself an agent of hope. It's all we have, right? If I don't, you know what I mean? If I don't have hope, and so if I, when I say anything that can be perceived as negative, if I'm sounding critical of the industry or of any part of it, I don't mean to offend anyone. It's just because I actually believe we can do so much better. And that's where my hope lies, is that I still firmly believe, I'm the eternal optimist. Like, we can turn this around, climate change, like whatever it is that's, because we are inherently good, even if we've lost our way, even if some people, like I lost my way and I was found again, like we all have that, and the hero's journey and the heroine's journey are they're real, and so wherever we are on the path, I agree, this year has just absolutely forced, and this is what's interesting, right? There's a whole bunch of people that want to cling and get back to normal. Why would you want to go back to the way things were? It was terrible. We were on the brink of destruction of ourselves, the planet included, right? Why would you want to go back to that? But there will be those who will want to, because it's still comfortable, right? We talk about this in recovery, right? Why did I sit in that place for so long when I was in my addiction? Because it was comfortable. It might not have been good, but I was familiar, and it felt, it didn't feel good, but it felt something. I often say I'm feeling like, the swear word that starts with S. I shan't do it on your show.
So it's fine. We're all grown-ups here. Go for it, Annie.
But really and truly, I believe in the power of Ubuntu and Meraki and these beautiful concepts that we have seen in the world, that we don't have to punish our way out of, like you were talking about earlier before the show. We don't have to criminalize there are ways forward. And I think I like what you said at the beginning, like, let's bring together, a contingent of international people and really talk about how to level up. Like I've been in talks with some people in Canada about how to level up the entire industry, whether it's, the individual counselors being accredited and certified, whether it's the organizations themselves. Like, there's many things that we can do that are business and process oriented. And then there's what can we do as individuals? And hope is it's the word. We can't give up hope that there is a way forward. There is a much more beautiful world, like Charles Eisenstein says, that we're capable of seeing. And I believe.
I mean, I agree. And I think this conversation has been going on, certainly between myself and Sarah, for many years. And now it's happening. And the only reason it's happening is because of the pandemic, and because we've so normalized our use of these online spaces. Because we were sort of, when I met you in California, we were discussing these ideas, but it just seemed like a world away and still in the old mindset of, does that mean we need some sort of real world conference? Well, we don't. We can do it this way, and we can build upon it. And so my hope is that we will build upon it, and maybe talk to some of the people that and Sarah talk to some of the people that and begin to look at how we use these spaces. Because I think one of the things that both of you have said is really important is this sort of role modeling thing. And I think that there are people who exist in all elements of the industry, the people who are doing the business development stuff, the people who are doing the management stuff, the people who are doing the clinical stuff, etc., etc. There are people existing in every area of the industry who, somewhere have that hope that they will get the opportunity to do something the right way. And I think we can sort of feed that hope, and we can sort of bring those conversations out into light. I guess my journey has been something like this, as a grumpy old man, that it's too easy for me to get into focusing, and this is part of my history of addiction. It's too easy for me to get in focusing on what the problem is. And one of the things I've had to learn very clearly in recovery, and all elements of recovery, both the addiction and the mental health stuff, is I need to focus on what the solution is. And that's what I'm hoping we're offering, is what the solution is. Because as an addict, I knew I was obsessed with the problem. And as soon as I get obsessed with the problem, I am the problem. And I just need to just let that go. And it's been, sort of winding up the show, you might guess, because we've gone through a whole hour, folks.
Wow.
It's done. I'm afraid we've run out of time for this show, but what I'm hoping is we can build in, and sort of I'm hoping we can reach out to Ian and some other people as well, Mr. Blair, and get him involved in another conversation. Certainly the three of us to meet, I would like on some sort of regular basis, actually, to keep this conversation going and pull other people into it and look at whether we can build it into something that is supporting those people who, like all of us, have at times felt very fed up with the situation and very distraught about it, and begin to bring people some hope. So if you're both into that, my team will reach out to you and start sort of talking about that very seriously, how we do it. For now, we're going to have to finish, I'm afraid. I don't know how to end this week, because it's been lovely to see you both, and just sort of I have a sense I'm not on my own, which sometimes I really feel like I am. And but tonight I don't. Tonight I feel like I'm part of a tribe. And that's always very good. I want to sort of finish maybe on sort of what's been the most important gift for you this last year in the pandemic, and if we can go through that, maybe have a think about it. It's not to be Pollyanna about it. I agree with you, Sarah. We can't be Pollyanna. It's been shit. So it's about it. It's been absolutely shit, and it's caused a lot of damage to me and other people, and it's caused a lot of death. But there are positive things that come out of it. And I think if you could name one positive thing that has happened, specifically because of the pandemic, what would it be?
You want to go first, Sarah? I got something. I'm ready if you aren't.
I can go. I think that's pretty easy for me. I decided to move home. It was kind of that push of how much longer am I going to be on this, this quest? And don't get me wrong, California is extraordinarily beautiful. I loved every minute of it, but I got back to my family, and I'm ready to stay here for a very long time. And that I don't think would have necessarily happened had we not been going through all this.
Yeah, great. Annie?
Well, it's going to sound interesting after what you just said, but it is about my family too. I mean, I had a really, really tough year. My PTSD went off the charts, and Noel already knows this part, but I ended up going back to treatment for my PTSD, which was a silver lining in and of itself. I've been talking to my family, way more regularly, having these kind of video chats, which is great. Now, if I could, which I can't, my mom's in the one province, or maybe one of the only provinces in Canada, but I can't even go to her. I've spent 2 years. I cannot my mom, which breaks my heart. If I could, I would have moved there, but I can't. I literally can't even enter it. So instead, I'm buying her an iPad so we can see each other as much as we can until I can go there. But it's if I had to sum it up, it was just that reordering of what's really important, right? Just like what truly knowing what's important to me. And it's been about taking care of myself too, right? Like I've had to really, really be kind to myself this year, because it's been a hell of a ride. So like a few, but silver linings, there are many. And I'm just, again, grateful that I was in recovery when this all happened, because, oh my God, I cannot imagine what being in a pandemic, like if I was still drinking. Yeah. Noel's face.
Absolutely. Oh my God. Yeah. And for me, it's boring, but the truth. And you've both alluded to it or talked about it directly. It's my relationship with Matteo. My 10-year-old boy has grown and blossomed this last year. And the relationship with his mum and our ability to co-parent with Nara has grown and blossomed. And that's a gift I never thought I'd have. And certainly because just before the pandemic, it was very rocky. That's when we split. And so I thought it was all over. But the pandemic brought us together, and we've learned how to be good parents together with this extraordinarily beautiful boy who's best gift I've ever had. I don't know if children are gifts, but he is. So anyway, got to finish there. Really, really fantastic. Lovely to have you both on. It's always lovely to see you again. You know, my mates from all over the world. It makes me feel very cosmopolitan. And
you know, we're so cool.
Absolutely. So, really lovely to see you, and say goodbye to everybody, and see you all the audience next week. If you should just stay there as I say goodbye. And I don't know who's on next week. I've got no idea. But there'll be somebody on next week who'll be fantastic and wonderful, I'm sure. And there'll be me, who isn't fantastic or wonderful, just this boring old dinosaur that whitters on about nonsense. But see you all next week. And I say bye-bye for now. Bye-bye, folks.
Thank you.